What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtonette, and it is time for a Sugar Bowl preview, taking a look at the matchup between the number 2 Washington Huskies and the number 3 Texas Longhorns. Both of these offenses provide a ton of excitement, a ton of versatility, and the ball should be flying around the gridiron in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, or I guess Caesars Superdome as it's called now, down in New Orleans. But if you're going to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date. But without further ado, let's dive into this matchup. So Washington and Texas, two teams. Washington that hasn't been to the playoff since 2016, and Texas that has never been to the playoff. Both have history in college football. Texas is a bit more decorated, especially when you look at the national titles. You look at the 2005 championship with Vince Young winning at the Rose Bowl against USC. Washington does have a championship back in 1991. So both of these teams are teams that are, forerunners in their conference. In the Pac-12 or the Pac-10, Washington has typically been at or near the top. Texas, in a similar way, in the Big 12 or when it was the Big 8 or Southwest Conference. And would expect, an adjustment period, but would expect nothing less once they get to the SEC. So both of these teams are very decorated. And I think both of these teams, it really does start with the offense. And of course, it starts with the quarterback. For Washington, you have Michael Penix Jr., the runner-up in the Heisman voting. This season, he threw for 4,200 yards, 33 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and rushed for 3 touchdowns. Hasn't rushed for a lot of yardage, unlike the previous matchup that I previewed, Michigan and Alabama, where both of those quarterbacks are able to run the ball a bit more. Penix is a bit more of a pocket passer. He is able to do some things with his legs, but overall doesn't run a whole lot. And then you've got Texas, Quinn Ewers, who missed 2 games earlier this year with an injury, but was able to come back quickly from that and went on to throw for 3,100 yards, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and also has 5 rushing touchdowns. So sometimes when the Longhorns are in the red zone, something to keep an eye on, see if maybe he either QB sneaks or takes a draw, does a read option, and keeps it for himself. Either way, both of these quarterbacks have not been strangers to running in touchdowns, but overall it has not been a strong suit of theirs. It is passing. And for both of these offenses, the receivers that they have are really kind of 3-headed monsters. There's one guy for Washington who stands out, and then for Texas, it's a bit more of a dual or even triple threat. So for the Huskies, the Biletnikoff, I believe, runner-up, Rome Odunze, 81 receptions, 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. He's an incredible player. He deservedly was in the Biletnikoff finalists, and is just an incredible receiver for the Huskies. He's able to get down the field. He's able to create open space and able to make a lot of big plays for the Huskies as well with the 13 touchdowns. And then Jalen Polk is actually, I would say it's a bit of a 2 or 3-headed monster for the Huskies as well. Jalen Polk, 60 receptions for 1,000 yards. So I think that is a very efficient yards per catch. I'll pop up the number on that. 8 touchdowns. And then Jalen McMillan as well. I think he battled injuries off and on this season, but he 34 catches for 468 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Jeremy Bernard and Jake Westover, a couple of other options for Penix to throw to. They've combined for 66 receptions, just a tick over 700 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So this Huskies receiving core is stacked. It helps when they have, again, a Heisman runner-up at quarterback throwing them the ball, but they are a massive part. And the Huskies' offensive line, too, has given Penix protection all year. He's been sacked just 11 times the entire season. So that's not even once per game, which I would say once per game is a really good average, and he's not even getting sacked that often. Pretty close, but overall the protection is very good. On the flip side, Texas is led by Xavier Worthy, has 73 catches for 969 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he's backed up brilliantly by A.D. Mitchell, kind of on the opposite flank, or sometimes if they bunch in the same side. But regardless, 51 receptions, 813 yards, 10 touchdowns for just a tick under 16 yards per catch. So a very, very high average for A.D. Mitchell. He makes big plays, and he's no stranger to a game like this. Obviously, the transfer from Georgia was a national champion last year, And so he's played in big games like this, and I think that could prove to be an important thing for the Texas offense. And then tight end Jatavion Sanders, 39 for 607, 2 touchdowns. And then Jordan Whittington, 38 for 435 and a touchdown. Couple of other guys, tight ends for Washington, Culp and Cuevas. But how will they fare against the secondaries? And let's start with Texas, because I went over the Washington passing attack first. So they'll be going up against Jaron Thompson, 7 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, 17 total tackles. Terrence Brooks, 6 pass deflections, 3 interceptions. Jahdae Barron and Malik Muhammad are also 2 guys who have created problems for opposing quarterbacks with pass deflections and excellent coverage. Ryan Watts is another cornerback for the Longhorns. In the back end at safety, they've got Keaton Crawford at free safety, and then Jaron Thompson, mentioned him already. And then also kind of a sneaky piece in this Texas pass defense is T'Vondre Sweat. He does a phenomenal job of getting his hands up, 5 pass deflections, and he also has 2 sacks, so he's able to create pressure. As I mentioned already, this Washington offensive line does a really good job at preventing sacks, but overall something to keep an eye on. And then for the Washington defense, I think the Washington secondary is just slightly stronger. The numbers may or may not prove that all the time, but I think the guys that they have are a bit more able to create turnovers, maybe a little bit more than the Texas defense does. Jabbar Muhammad has 12 pass breakups and 3 interceptions. The Husky safety position, Michelle Powell, I think has 6 pass deflections and 3 interceptions. Thaddeus Nixon, 6 pass deflections and interception. And then cornerbacks, Dominique Hampton. I believe Hampton is he's the leading tackler with 92 as well. So typically, in the Pac-12, the DBs are going to be making a lot of the plays. It might not be as required because I'll go over the Texas rushing attack here in a little bit, but the Longhorns are able to run the ball a bit more maybe than what the Huskies saw in the Pac-12 this year. And then Elijah Jackson and Devon Banks are a couple of the other cornerbacks for the Washington defense. So I think Quinn Ewers will face a challenge against the Washington pass defense, but I think the receivers that he have will be able to create space, be able to get open, and be able to provide a little bit of problems for the Washington defense as well. And I think the high-powered Huskies attack will be a lot for the Texas defense to face, but I think Texas will be able to manage the game, and I think either way, this game is going to be a close game. I think if one team is more likely to pull away, I would say it would be Washington, but Texas has that ability to hit you over the top as well. A.D. Mitchell, again, that 16 yards per catch average. He makes a lot of big, long plays, long passes over the top. I think he had one against Alabama that went for big yardage. So overall, both of these offenses go up against strong secondaries. But then the ground game, and it's definitely something that Texas leans on more. Looking at in terms of how many plays they've run that were rushes, Texas has just shy of 500 rushing attempts. Washington has just 360. So that shows the disparity between passing and rushing for the Huskies and how Texas is a bit more balanced. And if anything, I think they slightly favor the run. Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter is a really good backup, really gets a comparable number of carries, 129, 595 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Jaden Blue is another option. He's got 56 rushes for 339 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Baxter also does a phenomenal job of getting carries, and even Blue sometimes gets in there and is able to get some yardage when maybe Baxter needs a breather. For Washington, it's definitely more on one guy, and that's Dylan Johnson. He's really, throughout the season, I talked about this in my video of the Huskies' road to the college football playoff. He really showcased what he's able to do, especially in that win over Oregon State, and I think kind of showed that, sure, this Washington defense leans towards the pass, but I don't think they're one-dimensional by any means. I think, yes, they stretch the field and they hit you over the top, but they're also able to get some yards on the ground. And Johnson, 201 rushes for 1,113 yards and 14 touchdowns. And a couple guys who can kind of spell him when he needs a break are Will Nixon and Tybo Rogers. So this Washington rushing attack is strong. Is it as strong or multifaceted as Texas's run game? No, but I think it isn't a case of this offense being completely one-dimensional. I think if it comes down to it, and if the Texas defense is able to limit the pass and they need to, try a couple run plays to break one free or something like that, or create a little bit of momentum on offense, I think Washington is able to do that. But they'll be going up against some strong defenses. And going over the sack totals first, I didn't fully go into this when I talked about it, but going over the Washington defense first, Edefuan Ulofoshio has 3 sacks and 83 total tackles. I think he's second on the team, I believe, to Dominique Hampton in total tackles. Braylon Trice, defensive end, edge rusher, has 5 sacks. And then Carson Bruner, linebacker, has 75 total tackles. Those are some of the names to watch. Alfonso Tuputala, Ulumu Ale, and then in the back end for the Washington defense, free safety Mikel Esteen, and then went over the rest of that secondary. Those are some of the names to watch for the Washington Huskies. Zion Tupu Ola Fetui, I hope I said that right. He has 3.5 sacks, the edge rusher for the Huskies. So this Huskies defense does a good job, and I'll pop up the numbers here, what their yards per game allowed are. This matchup defensively is not comparable to Michigan, Alabama. I talked about that in my last video, but I think both of these defense have done what it takes to get stops late in games, and I think the Huskies, they showed against a high-powered offense like Oregon that sometimes they're going to give up points, but I think ultimately their offense has the guns to make up maybe for some maybe call them deficiencies on the defensive end. And for Texas, some of their leading guys, they have 32 sacks as a team. Another thing I didn't mention earlier that's a little bit of something to watch is Texas has allowed 26 sacks this whole season, so actually right at 2 sacks per game. So something to keep an eye on for some of those Washington edge rushers or a middle linebacker like Ulo Foshio. But the Texas defense, they've got the jack position, kind of a linebacker position, Baron Sorrell with 4 sacks. The buck position, Ethan Burke with 5.5 sacks. I believe that's the team lead. Byron Murphy, nose tackle, with 5 as well, and he does a good job of plugging the run lanes there in kind of the interior of the Texas defensive line. Anthony Hill, the weak side linebacker, has 5 sacks, and then Jalen Ford he's really the centerpiece of this defense at middle linebacker. 91 total tackles, 2 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Ford really leads this Texas defense from the middle. He's the leading tackler and overall is the main piece to watch for this defense. But I think the guy who pairs with him, and looking at the stats, it doesn't show as this big number of stats. But Tavondre Sweat, I mentioned him in the pass defending, but he does a really good job of disrupting the passer, does a really good job of breaking down offensive lines, and I think he'll be a guy to watch as well. I think Ford and Sweat will both be difference makers. And then mentioned Byron Murphy, another linebacker who gets considerable playing time, David Gabenda, and then the defensive tackles alongside Sweat is Alfred Collins. So both of these defenses, again, they're not, I would say, to the level of a Michigan and an Alabama. Part of that might be because they play in conferences that are a lot more offense heavy and run by offense, although I think really especially the SEC and even the Big Ten have kind of shifted towards that a bit. Big Ten is definitely more of a defensive conference at this time, though. But I think both of these defense will have their hands full against the offenses, and I think this should be, I would imagine, a high-scoring game. Sometimes you say that for a game like this and it doesn't end up delivering, but I think these offenses are just so high-powered. It's hard to imagine this one being anything under 65 points total. I think I'm not sure where the over/under is on this one, but I imagine if it's anything less than 65, I'm not given betting advice or anything like that, and I don't even really advocate for sports betting, but I think you'd be pretty good, it'd be a good option to potentially take the over if it's anything under 65 points, because both of these offenses are going to go up and down the field. They both teams have players, guys that I mentioned who can make a play, who could force a turnover, or who can bat down a pass maybe on 3rd down when they need to get a stop, or maybe get pressure and get a sack. So This game will be, again, it's going to be high-powered. And just looking real quickly also at the kicking game, Burt Auburn for Texas is 28 for 34, so not a high percentage. He's 7 for 8 under 40, which is good, but at that point, most of those are basically extra point distance. So you probably, it's okay. I would say it's okay missing one, but if it comes down to a field goal from short, he has missed one from under 40 before. 9 of 12 from 40 to 49 yards, and 2 of 4 from 50 plus. On the opposite side, Grady Gross for the Huskies has yet to attempt a 50-plus yard field goal. He's 13 for 17 overall, and he also, on short kicks, is just 4 for 7 from 30 to 39 and 5 for 6 from 40 to 49. So both of these kickers aren't as dependable as the kickers that I previewed in the Michigan-Alabama game. So if this game does come down to a kick, could be a little bit, sweaty palms time for fans for both of these teams, but overall just a factor that's worth considering. And then a couple of other metrics that I think are worth measuring. On third downs, Washington has converted 48% to Texas just 39%. On fourth down, Washington is 11 for 15, Texas is 19 for 30. And then turnover margin, the Huskies have just +1 turnover margin, and the Longhorns have +7. So Texas has done a better job. So both offenses will be going up and down the field in this game, and I think it ultimately comes down to just the ability that Washington has to just simply outscore you. They've done it all season. They've had a couple of games too where if it is more of a defensive battle, they're able to win, like that game against Oregon State. Or even the game against Arizona State, a game that probably shouldn't have been that close. They don't even score an offensive touchdown, but Mish Powell gets the pick six and Washington gets the win. So in this game, I think the Huskies are able to get the job done. Again, I think it's very high scoring. I'm going to go with Washington 38, Texas 33. But that's my prediction. Let me know your thoughts on the college football playoff semifinals, both this game and Michigan-Alabama. If you've stayed to the end of this video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I think this video is probably going to go up after Christmas. So I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and have a very, very happy New Year. And enjoy these two big games that are coming up on New Year's Day. But without further ado, this is Peter Burnett, College Football Talk, signing out. Peace.